Welcome to the meeting for March 2026. Thanks for joining us, those of you who are here. Traditionally, I kind of run through what's going on in the Access community around mostly about chapter meetings and other events. So let me do that really quickly. Remind you that at Access Forever, we're always looking for examples of outstanding Access development to showcase. So if you're interested in showcasing something you have done, go to our contact form and fill it out, and we'll be in touch. Bug fixes are always a high interest item, at least for me. I think they probably are for most of us, but there were only 3 this month. Carl summarized them here. The 2 of them had to do with the Monaco query editor, and one was with data sheet selection, which I didn't really see myself. Linda wrote in more detail about the specifics of each of those bugs here in her bug update on the tech community. So if you're interested in seeing what was fixed, you can dash over there and see that. I keep an eye on the Access roadmap. And as we have reported the last 2, 3, 4 months in a row, it hasn't changed. They're still working on it. I guess there's progress being made. And those who are going to the MVP Summit, I think they'll probably get more feedback, and hopefully we'll get some more information about what's going on with these, but we're anxiously looking forward to those. In conjunction with the MVP Summit, there will be an event held on Friday, March 27th. This is an in-person event, so if you're not already planning to be in Redmond for the MVP Summit or live here, this probably isn't something you're going to take a great interest in, but it looks like some very interesting presentations. Mike Wolf's going to be talking about how do you retire. Rochelle is going to be talking about using Azure SQL Server within your Access application. She worked for Microsoft for several years, and I think she should have a lot of insight on how that's going to work. This one looks great. We're all concerned, or most of us are concerned about the new Outlook problem. They claim to have solved it. We'll see what they have to say. Juan is going to be talking about using AI as your Access development assistant. And I think he's dived really deeply into the world of AI, so I think you'll have some useful information to share. And of course, they will get a report. They'll get a report from the Access team on what's going on now. Carl Donnerbauer's event is later on. This one is an online meeting, April 16th and 17th. If you haven't signed up for that, that's well worth the time. It's a 2-day event. I've attended several times via, they use Teams for the meeting. The Access team will be there. Carl always gives an interesting update on Access in the world community. Juan's going to repeat his using AI as your Access development assistant presentation. Alessandro's been working on a new Ultimate Ribbon Creator. I've seen a preview of that. That should be interesting. Mike's going to review Twin Basic. And these 2, Andrew and Peter, are going to talk about their alternative to Outlook email with the Graph Authenticator. And Carl is still soliciting presentations. So if you have something you'd like to share, please contact him. So that's it for the world of Access. Did anybody have any input, questions, comments? I'm just going to dive right in. And I'll give you about a 10-15 minute background about why I wanted to have this discussion with you tonight. And then I'll turn it over, because we've already spent quite a bit of time leading up to the meeting talking about some of these issues. So I'm sure there'll be plenty to say. When I was thinking about what would I present tonight, I decided, let me go back and look at my history. We have YouTube videos going back I think there are a total of 55 videos up there now, 58, something like that. Let me just scout through here and see if I can spot something, some ideas about what might be worth sharing. So I pulled the lifetime views and the last 90-day views. And so you can see Albert's presentation on SharePoint with Access has almost 13,000 views, and it's by far the number one. It's 4 times more than the next highest, which was Juan Lujo. Excuse me, Juan Ho's REST APIs presentation. That was very interesting. But I'm looking at this thinking, I can't make heads or tails of this. So since we've had a lot of interest in AI over the last several months, I decided to ask Claude what it could figure out from looking at those CSV files. So this is the entire conversation I had with Claude. This folder contains 2 CSV files. I'm trying to gain insight by comparing lifetime views to the last 90 days. What can you determine as far as patterns? Okay, and I'm just going to let you read along with me. Is this large enough for you to read? Is it readable? Give me a signal,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah,
okay.
it's fine.
Okay, great. So number one video dominates lifetime, which I already knew. It's 23% of all lifetime views ever. It's 4.7 times more popular than the number 2. And then it pointed out, recently it's dropped off. It's still drawing, but it's a fading giant. That's the kind of insight that I think I was looking for. A brand new video is dominating recent views, and that's the one from last month, Ben Sacharich, Monaco editor. In 17 days, it has 455 views, making it number 1. And since it is number 1 for that period of time, it has a 100% ratio. It's less than 90 days old, I should say. It has 100% staying power. I guess, well, I'll use the term that Claude used. This one surprised me. My lightweight auditing from last November is staying pretty popular in terms of the number of ongoing views, although that's a short period of time. That probably just represents longevity or newness as much as anything, but I was kind of surprised that it was staying up there. This is Adam Waller's Access version control from a year ago. It's hanging in there. This is John Colby's session when he talked about incremental development last August. Greg Regan's interface design is staying popular, migrating to SQL Server. Greg is in there twice with his form resizing one. And then Albert's SharePoint session, it's dropped off considerably. So then it's pointed out, recent videos naturally have high ratios, but the older videos with high recent ratios are the true evergreen performers. And then it started calling out specifics. Greg Regan's great interface design is the best long-term performer. I won't read all of that. You can read that for yourself. We'll get back to Greg later on. SQL Server integration is the consistently strong topic category. 4 of the 6 top categories involve SQL Server. Migrating using dbeaver, which is the alternate to SSMS. Kevin Bell did that presentation. I've forgotten what the navigating forms was with relation to SQL Server. And this is one that I did a long time ago on secure apps with SQL Server. It never had a lot of views, but it has consistently been viewed. It's consistently staying visible. Most of the older videos have tailed off. Let's see. Yeah, that's not really important or useful. Okay, here's the bottom line. The clearest pattern, AI-related and SQL Server integration content is driving current growth. General purpose access content is fading. And the recommendation, the channel would likely benefit from leaning into AI tooling for access development. And it cites the Monaco editor's early performance as a strong signal of that, and continued SQL Server cloud integration topics. Great interface design is an outlier worth studying. And I said, yes, this is a combination of an excellent presenter and a compelling topic. And you can read the details here, but it looks like a perennial question that brings people in from search. How do I make my Access database look more modern? So those are the insights and recommendations I got quickly out of Claude. That's probably what's the pattern here? I can't remember if the
George, I have a question.
yes.
What constitutes a view? Does that mean I watch the movie from start to finish?
Oh, good question. Thank you for reminding me. I meant to talk about that. Yes. No, that is the number of times someone started watching it. The duration of views drops off very quickly. I think probably 10% of any one video is the average. People watch the first 10 to 15%. Very few people stay with it for the full video. And that's true across all of the chapters. Every single chapter has the same pattern. Very few videos. I think which one was it? I think there's one that has staying power, but most of them drop off after like 10 or 15 minutes. So it is definitely something that could be a next level analysis. We could refine this by saying, show me this same pattern in terms of how long people actually stick with the content, but it's a way less than I would like. That's for sure.
But it does tell us something about how a presentation should be structured.
Yes.
When you speak with a potential presenter, you should bring, I would suggest you bring this up with them and say, you have only 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning to make an impact. So I don't want you to speak 5 minutes about your accomplishments since the 1980s when you were working for this and that and you were doing COBOL programming. We don't need to hear that, at least not in the beginning. We need to hear, what is this presentation about and why should you stick around to see it?
Yes, that's another very important insight. Yeah, thank you for calling that out. Yeah, and Adrian is agreeing. That's an insight that I wasn't focusing on because I was thinking more in terms of topics, but that's a really crucial thing. Jump in, don't do a long explanation about why I'm doing this. Just jump in and show it. Start with a demo. Show us what your pattern is, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, that's really important as well. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what led me to think, well, let's look at some more at
because if you start with that overview and like do a really fast kind of, this is what I'm showing you,
yeah.
And then after that, you can take people's questions and dive into the bits they want to know more about.
Yes. Yeah. That's probably, I probably should share this with the other chapters as well, now that you bring that up. Yeah. I was thinking about this selfishly as what am I going to do here? But that's probably something that's very useful for everybody to think about.
But that's just your nature, George.
Yeah, I tend to think of myself. Okay, so now you got me off track. Kent, that didn't take very long. I wanted to share another little project that I worked on that involved AI, and I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to jump in. I have this application, and I've got about 2 more minutes. I'm going to drag this over. Okay. I run two websites. One is the Grover Park data, and the other is a personal one for my family. So I can go to their administrative site and log in and get these statistics. And I keep track of them locally because I can put them in Power BI and play with them. What I wanted to do was automate this process where I log in and get the data. I had an IE-based web browser control, which I kind of could do that, but not very well. So I decided I wanted to replace this with a web browser version, which uses JavaScript, and also automate the entire process. So now, if I click this button, here's the live demo. Are you seeing the updates?
Yes, I saw the form being filled out and then a graph being shown.
Yep. And as you'll watch here, these numbers will update. Okay, so that whole process was written by Claude under my direction. And I'll only show part of it because that's not really why I wanted to bring it up. I just wanted to point out that this code is all based on JavaScript. I have no idea what it does. It may be the most efficient JavaScript ever. It may be horribly inefficient. All I know is that it works. I can log in to the two different websites, read the data that I want, log back out, update the local table with the new data, all from clicking that one button. And all of this, the point, I guess, is really all of this code came from Claude. Well, I shouldn't say all of it, because I inserted my own error handler, but everything else was done. And this is the other part that I want to talk about. This is a result of the trial and error that I was describing earlier. Claude tried, I think, at least 3 different methods of getting the data, and it failed every time. And finally, on the 4th or the 5th attempt, it said, well, I'm going to try this approach. And I think the approach that finally worked is using the clipboard. And this is where I think some people have already pointed out the danger, Jeff, for one, that I don't really understand what it's doing. All I know is that it does work and I get the result that I want. But whether using the clipboard is really the preferred method, if there's another method that could be developed that might be better, that's entirely possible. But for the purpose of getting the data for my little application that nobody else is ever going to see, it works. So that's kind of the strength of AI and the weakness. It did something that I don't really understand. All I know, the bottom line is that when I click the button, it logs me out, logs me back in, grabs the data, logs into the other website, grabs the data, updates. Of course, you won't see it update because these numbers didn't change. But it refreshes the form and I'm done. So that's kind of the power of AI, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours of my time, something that would have taken me a week to learn the JavaScript alone. So with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you. What's your opinion of this specific example, but other, instances of using AI in your own work? You can feel free to unmute and comment.
Yeah, my major concern is the architecture of an application that it produces. Whether or not it's going to be, because as you said, there's a lot of that stuff you don't understand, but it just works. Well, okay, but when it comes to maintainability, where does that leave you?
Well, but also let's qualify this. I think George means I don't understand the JavaScript, but I
Oh, okay.
certainly understand the VBA that was written.
Yeah.
Is that true, George?
Yeah, that's closer to what I was saying. Yes.
Yeah. So you're not a JavaScript programmer, never will be. It created something that works. You have to believe that JavaScript is good enough for the task at hand.
Yeah.
Well, and JavaScript is so universally used that it's got to, if it's not good at JavaScript, it's never going to be good at anything. So you'd expect AI to be good at JavaScript.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the point, but it's not really the main point. I think the main point is that we're on this. The way I see it, we're on this really razor's edge between being in control and trusting something that we may or may not be may or may not be completely trustworthy.
Well, that's the point. Because who knows what they could embed in JavaScript if they wanted to be malicious.
Yeah.
But when I was a development manager, I'd always do code reviews on everything that came back from a programmer, and I'd go through it and make sure I understood it all. So I'd have to do the same thing with AI. I wouldn't just take it as read.
Or at least it seems like we need to beef up on our skills on not even if you don't understand every line of code that was written or why this is a superior line to some other alternatives. Do I at least have the skills to see whether this is correct or not? Right? I had that situation. I wrote about it on Access World Forum today, where the last 2 days I was working on a set of T-SQL queries. One group of queries gave me one number, 35 million. The other one gave me 37 million. And so I worked with Copilot over 5 hours, optimizing those queries, understanding where the problems were. And at the end of the 5 hours, we were down to a discrepancy of a few cents here and there. And I fully understood where things were correct, and I was able to use Excel and other tools to test the quality of the code that was being generated. And a few times it was in the ballpark, but not quite correct. And I was able to point out and say, hey, in your version, this column has a lot more nulls than there should be. And then it went back and said, oh, yeah, I kind of made an assumption, and therefore the join was this way, and therefore we have a lot more nulls. Let me go ahead and correct that. Or it would ask questions about the data and say, can you run this test query so that I have a better understanding of your data? So we're kind of working together. So when George said, is AI your buddy, your assistant, or a necessary evil? It was an assistant. It was probably like a superior developer than I am. But I knew enough to check it where it went off the rails.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a young fella, I used to do like double entry accounting for businesses where you'd have a big ledger book where you've got columns of numbers and they had to add up to the right and down the column, and then you had a comparison of and with a spreadsheet you can do that quite easily, but being able to actually make things balance is really quite nice. But when I was working with an access report last week, and you actually have to put the formula in each individual cell, as opposed to with Excel, you can put a $ in front and drag it across. And I was thinking, now, could AI do this a lot more efficiently than I could? Because I made a couple of boo-boos, which I only discovered when the columns didn't balance.
Yeah.
And I think AI would probably be good at that, where you can say, I want you to repeat these formulas across all the entire row.
Mm-hmm.
That was...
And we have to be smart enough to check it and to not just take generated code for granted. Ben Sesserich in his presentation said something like that, and he said, every time you give me an answer, I want you to give me the confidence that you have about that
the confidence level. Yeah,
I really like that. I didn't do that in this particular session, but I think I'm going to weave that into my practice too. Because if the confidence level is 99%, I might go with it a little bit easier than if it is 30%.
Well, because the way LLMs work, they have a vector and they chug along that vector until they get something that's probably the right answer. But if you can say, I don't think a 60% is good enough, keep going until you get to 100 to 99%, and then come back to me. Because they do tend to approximate, and I guess that asking for a confidence factor would be a good way of getting them to go a bit further and find the right answer first time. Because typically they don't. You've got to go through 2 or 3 iterations. So
I just want to point out that I needed 2 data points. My validation was 2 numbers, not a whole spreadsheet full of numbers. So it's a very simple. I knew the answers before I went in.
Yeah, well, my old man could run his finger down a row, because he worked in a bank, could run his finger down a column and of 4 or 5 figure numbers and put the total straight into the bottom. And he could do the same with the right. And, and that was pretty amazing skill that was sort of lost these days. But that being able to balance is the 2 figures to make sure you haven't made a mistake in the middle. And of course, if your difference is divisible by 9, then the problem is most likely that you've transposed 2 numbers.
Well, that's a good point. And Domenico has mentioned that in one of his chat comments. Looks like there's another one about testing and trial and error. Do you want to jump in with your thoughts, or are you happy to have us look at the chat?
Did I just miss something?
No, I was just noting that Domenico has put a couple of relevant comments in the chat. I was asking him if he'd care to elaborate.
He says he can't open his mic.
Oh, I see. Now there it is. Okay. It was hidden behind my microphone. All right. Unfortunately, so I'll just read them off then. Which one was the most relevant? We'll see how many of us actually learn a new language. I already know Python, and yet there's always something new to learn. Claude has written 3,000 lines, and then the relevant comment is at the end. I could have gone through the documentation and all, but how much trial and error before it actually worked? That's kind of where I see a danger, a red flag. When I get to the point where I know this works, there's a real strong temptation to not take it that last little ways to make sure that it's 99% reliable. Am I going to come up with data like Tom was talking about, nulls in data? Am I going to encounter different data that's going to cause this to fail? And how much trial and error? And can you write tests? Is it possible to write tests?
Yep.
Will Claude do that for you? Or ChatGPT, I know.
One of the things that I asked Copilot, was in this case, to do was give me the semantics of this query. here's a 50-line query. What does it do? And it came back with an answer that surprised me, because it said, well, you're getting these kinds of jobs plus those kinds of jobs, but not these kinds of jobs. Oh, and I said, well, the third kind should be included as well. It said, would you like me to write the code for you?
Mhm.
And I had not seen that. And how long would it have taken me to see that? Or even realize that, oh, an entire set of jobs is not being included in the results. And that could explain part of the discrepancy that I was trying to chase down. So I wasn't even asking it to write code. I was asking it to interpret existing code and tell me what it did. And it was surprisingly good at doing that.
Yeah.
I never go anywhere nowadays without getting Claude code to sit there and tell me, review what I've just done. You see the changes between what it was before and what it is now. Review it. Tell me everything that you understand from that.
How exactly do you go about that, Adrian? You're using VCR or whatever. You've got the source files. You've made changes to source files, and it's doing a comparison between exactly what?
Well, it's focused in the repo, the repository. So when you do a /init at the beginning, which you would, you go to a folder, the repository folder, do /init, and it initializes itself in that folder. It makes notes of all the things that it thinks it needs to know. And when you've been asking it questions, like, let's work on some code here. We've got this module that we need to work on, blah, 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 blah. And I will export VCS, Adam Waller's VCS. I will export it, and Claude Code will, it will have historical notes and historical versions to compare it with. When I export it, it compares one with the other. It looks at where they're different, like with a comparison type thing where extra lines are added, some lines are lost, some shunted up with it works out where the changes are, and it basically comments on those changes.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole chat is based in the repo. So the repo is the source of everything I'm doing in that chat. I'm working on a particular project, which would be a repository that you get on GitHub. So the sort of thing that you get on there. Go on.
So are you doing this via Visual Studio Code or
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I did. Let me do a quick share, because I've got Mike's permission to do this before. So let me do a share, and then I'll switch to my remote system. Oh, I'm already on my remote system. Here is. Do you see my Pride Group full circle at the top there? The writing's a bit small, but this is basically what I work in. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different chats open within this folder. Pride Group Full Circle is the name of the repository. So everything that's within there, it can access it within this chat. If you look down here, I've got 4 different chats running at the moment. 4 different repositories. So work in 4 different areas. One is access modules. Excuse me. That's the existing code that Mike and Grandjean and Braveman, the company, have developed before I even got there. This one is Pride Group Full Circle, which is a new thing that I'm taking on and integrating with our existing code and the previous. The clients come to us and said our Access developers have left us in the lurch. So one of the first things I'm doing is merging it in with a lot of the stuff that we already have to make it so that we can do a release of a change thing in less than weeks, because their previous processes were utterly rubbish. But that's another matter. So I've got various different chats in here. When I started, I was doing different things in different chats. Now I find I don't need to, because I was worried that it would run out of context. And it does. You can see down here, you see where it says 35% of context remaining until auto compact. Well, that's not the end of the world. It will make notes of everything it feels is relevant in a markdown file, and then when it's finished compacting, it sort of opens itself up again fresh, but it reloads all the information from where it's made notes for this chat. So you get back to about 50% or 60%, depending on how big the chat is, and it will have brought itself up to date largely. There may be a couple of details that it didn't make note of, and you may have to remind it or go through the same question again, but largely it has the context to continue where you left off. Not quite as perfectly as when you do it, without it running out of context. It will remember things better. But you tell it, I mean, one of the things I've told it, because I find it very helpful practically, is that every time I send it a message, which is either a question or a comment or whatever. So when I type my stuff in here, the first thing it has to do is PowerShell command, get the date and print the date and time for me. So that when I review things later, I can see what happened when. Something's 3 days old, it's not something I did earlier today, and that's helpful if I'm logging my time and I forget to actually click the button that says right, start logging time, which I do from time to time. Unfortunately, I can go back to here and say, well, I started this conversation a few hours ago. When exactly? Oh, right, there we go. We've got that timestamp on there. So that's the, and I mean, what? Please check this last one is the last one I sent. No, second to last one I sent. Please check the updated code. Have I done that appropriately? Are there any logic gaps? Would you expect that to work? And it's given me an answer there. Basically, yes, it should work. There's one small problem, but that was there before I even touched anything. So, I'm listening, George.
Can I share one of my files that?
Of course you can. Do you want me to stop?
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Of course not.
If I can get.
I'll just make one point. During my career, I've decided the difference between a good programmer and a great programmer is the great programmer is good at testing their own work.
Yeah. Well, now I've lost the file I was going to share.
They're disciplined enough, I guess. What you're saying, Kent, is they're disciplined enough to test their own work in a way that's appropriate.
Yeah. I've made reference to the fact that I have been referred to as a cowboy coder on more than one occasion, and that's a large part of it. Is that ability to rein yourself in and say, does this make sense?
But when you're being accused of being a cowboy coder by Claude Code, by the AI, then
it hasn't done that. That was in the old days. That was in the old days when I was still working for a living. I just wanted to show, this is a file that we created at the end of a troubleshooting session. The subsite routing solution. I said, this is effective. I want you to remember what we just did in case we have to revisit this issue. So it created this markdown file.
Right. Yes.
From September. It has to do with authentication redirections. Now, obviously, at this point, this is not something that comes from VBA or Access, but I know enough about it now to recognize what it's doing and why it made the changes. But it marked up the changes it made and commented about why those changes were made. So if we ever have one of those relapses, and I think several people have mentioned relapses, we can refer back to this date when we fix this problem. And noted all of the incorrect usage and all the correct usage. And that's how many lines of code is that in this?
Code?
Not code, lines of comment, 189 lines document. And I've started doing this now at the end of every word session. I say, write me a memory. Remember what we just did, write a memory file. And it creates a memory.md summarizing like this, everything that happened in that session, regardless of what we're doing. And that has saved me more than once when Claude has forgotten something. That's all I wanted to show.
I certainly think that the any time you spend telling Claude Code what your style is, what your requirements are, how you like to see code come out, so that you don't have to sit there and retype it all. Any time and effort spent on that is well worth it, because clearly you know if it produces something that you're not comfortable with, or that you have to redo just to make it so that you are comfortable with it, it's wasted time. All you do is you tell it how you want it and get it to do that for you too.
But you can also ask Claude to produce you a skill that can be used in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so what I was showing you before with naming conventions and what have you, Claude wrote that for me and was firing questions at me and giving them back. So when you get something that's not right, you could produce a new skill to tell Claude how to do it the right way in the next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you have those files, you can always say, refer back to what we did before. And
yes. So the point I was also making before was that if you've got a folder that you've got a project in, you can have Claude MD in that folder, or you can actually put your skills and what have you in a higher folder that covers all of your projects, and all of your projects can share in that same skill.
Yeah, Claude Code has an area for everything that you do. You could have a company-wide folder.
Yeah.
You can have your own personal one, and you can have a separate one for the repo that you're working within. So you saw mine, it was like full circle, the Pride group full circle, whatever it was called. Yeah. And all of my work on that project goes under that folder. And so there's a Claude Code MDs for that it will use whenever it's working within that folder. Particular to that project.
I guess it's our job at the moment to work out the best ways of getting Claude to do things. And it's early days in doing this. We're having to write the right prompts and the right skills and all that for Claude to use. So we actually get, because I mean, I've got, I'm sure you've all got those clients who don't know what they want, but they'll know what they don't want when they get it.
Yeah, but only once they've got it.
So, we're at the time where we don't really know how to tell Claude what we want. We're just at the point where we're figuring out, well, no, that's not what I wanted. I need to write a skill so that next time you give me what I want.
So Kent, I saw part of your skill file that you had up on the screen earlier. And did you say that was generated by Claude? It seems like that has to come from you.
Yeah, but Claude was, but when I said I want to do some naming conventions, and Claude was throwing up, so what do you want the prefix for forms? What do you want the prefix for reports? What do you want to be so it wasn't just me saying each individual one, it was giving me prompts. And then with variable types, it was asking me again. I said, well, this variable type, we prefix it with da-da. Or in fact, in some cases, I was picking it from a list that it was offering, whether you want to prefix a string variable with just S or str or whatever. And one of the other things I do there is, if it's a module level variable, I'll put an M in front. If it's a global variable, I'll put a G in front, and it's got all that. And so that's, Claude was prompting me in a lot of cases and giving me options. It's always good to have options.
And Adrian, is your MD file similar? It is just about naming conventions. It's not about higher level concepts like I want my modules to be short. I want my functions to be short. I want to use classes more than modules.
As Jan was saying in her chat, within the chat, it's more than just that. No, Tom, mine would include various areas that I want it to look like. I want it to do it this way. I want it to do it that way. That would all be in what you tell Claude Code, and it will, as Kent says, it will help you to formulate an MD file because it stores it in MD files. It will help you formulate and update the MD file. And as I go along, I say things like, "No, I don't like that. No, don't give me line numbers that match the bloody file. I need the line number that matches VBA. VBA code is giving me line numbers that match some BAS file, which might have any number of property lines at the top that I don't see or am aware of because I'm looking directly in VBA. So I've told it that, and it's gone off and it's updated its file to say, when quoting line numbers, give the line number that's VBA relevant, so relevant to the top of the VBA part of the file, and also to, where you can, give references to the procedure that it's a part of or within." So one very quickly, if I may, Jan asked a question or made a comment. You can have it with it so that all the chats respond to it, but chats typically don't respond to changes in those files until they're restarted. Okay. However, it's not just all chats. Certain things are for some chats. Certain things are for you, regardless of which chats you're in. Some are the project, regardless who's working on it. So it's not all as tightly defined as that, but there are different ways that you can set it depending on what suits. I see your thumbs up, Jan. I know you're not on camera or speaking, so.
So we've kind of touched on testing, and how extensively have you done created test sets for your work? I mean,
I don't tend to. I haven't got very far with my testing because there's a lot of code crunching, a lot of changing things in the project to make things work. Because you've got two completely different sets of code that have to be merged together and made to work together, which I'm still in the process of doing. But when I do tests, I have the benefit of, I ask Claude Code, what do you expect to happen here beforehand? And it says, yeah, it should work, blah, blah, blah. I do it in, of course it doesn't, hasn't yet. So I can do two things then. I can report what comes back, what I see, we use VB Watchdog. So I'll give a VB Watchdog screen with all the variables and all the rest of it set. Or if it gets, a couple of times we got to that point and it just couldn't work out what was going on. So I went in and I said, look, I can do tracing. I can do debugging with tracing. What do you want to see? And it said, oh, well, it would be very helpful if you got to this point in the code to see what the value of such and such is. So I did a debug print, blah, 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 or immediate pain print, blah, blah, blah. And that was eventually able to help us determine what the problem was.
But so far, no formal test procedures for an entire application. It seems like that's something that AI should be able to help you do, is create test suites.
Well, and there are existing test frameworks. I'm trying to find the one that I've looked at a little bit. I failed to remember the name of it. But I will come up with it here in a few minutes.
Yeah,
so there are VBA test frameworks. None of them are super ideal in my mind, but that's because the VBA language is the way it is. But you can write tests, especially if you're kind of an object-oriented programmer.
I suppose Claude would be good at creating you test data. You say, here's an example of data. I want 10 times as much, and I want all of the names obfuscated or changed to whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I'm more leaning or hinting at test-driven development.
Yes, I know. Your module tests.
Where you write the test first and it fails because you haven't written the code yet.
Yeah.
And then you go write it until it passes the tests. But there is a whole other aspect, which is mocking the data, which is what you're referring to. Because in a database application, many of the tests are going to be, hey, let's get some data, query some data. And of course, you want it to be repeatable. So you're typically mocking the data. It gets complicated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I guess this is the thing, when it starts getting complicated, you've got to be pretty much as smart as Claude is, just not as fast. So Claude can do it faster, but I think we're at the point where we could still do it better, just nowhere near as quickly.
Yeah, well, this would assume that it knows enough about the testing framework that we're using that it can actually write tests for you. Have you tried to do any of that, Adrian?
Oh, I've got a very good test system. It's called Users.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it
No,
called?
I'm afraid my testing is not sophisticated. I do testing of what I know what's changed in the code, and then we would typically feed it back to the users to find if anything less common is going to come out. We test it to check that the change we've made are robust, etc. But after that, we'll probably give it back to them. And generally speaking, there aren't many residual errors coming through. It's very rare to get. Anyway, sorry.
Users will do some amazing things that you never even thought of.
Well, quite. I mean, well, yeah, but they're doing that before we even get into the picture. Because bear in mind, we're taking on a previous project, so that's and the idea of taking on that project and doing what I've done, the stitching together work, would have been horrendous without the support of Claude code in the background. But it doesn't just help with code. You can ask it, like, this is the repo, the repository. So this is the project. What does it do? And it will sit there and it will tell you what it does. It'll give a general overview of the whole project, which is pretty nice if you've got, goodness knows how many thousands of lines of code and hundreds of objects. It's got 109 remote tables to link, which breaks access. You guys probably know that in Access 365 now, they've got two things. They've got the large address aware, which is helpful, but they've also got, this is a 32-bit site. They've also got the updated table. I don't know what the table's called, but it has a table of tables that it maintains, and it used to be 2048 entries until relatively recently it got updated to 4096, which isn't massive even so. And when you do table relinking, it eats them up. So we had a really quite a hard error where we did a table relink to say, right, you release the system, it goes to, they start it on a particular location, one of their backends, and it has to relink everything. And the cost of that in these entries in this table was such that it would never work with 109 tables. it would always just get to the end of that and crash. So that's just something else we have to work our way through. But that's why did I raise that? I can't remember. My mind's gone blank.
Well, it's actually a nice thing to know. I've never hit that limit, but yeah.
We had no idea. It was a local. You tried to work. You say open record set, and you can say it on a table name. So you can say currently be open record set table name, and it was a local table, not one of the linked ones. A local table, and it said, "Oh no, I can't find that table." And it's like, you what now? It's a local table. I can open it in the front end. It's there, and we struggled to find out what was going on eventually.
I have had that happen. And I just went, well, it can't find that. I just do a compact and repair, which of course empties it out, and that fixed it.
Well, to be fair, you just need to close and open because it's a runtime thing. It's not a runtime thing. It's in
session
access
based
memory.
Yeah.
It's a session level thing.
Yeah.
But if you don't, if relinking is what grabs them all, or does tend to grab quite a number per table that you relink. So, it can be quite expensive. But once they're all relinked, if you close
So this is kind of your table defs collection, or? Well,
it's
documents of tables.
It's inside when Access runs, it opens your database, and it has an internal table.
An MSys table?
No, it's not a table def table. It's an internal in memory table. So it's a storage of where it's got X number of pointers to tables internally held, not table defs, but there will be tables. There could be linked tables. There could be local tables. And when you do relinking, it takes 2 or 3 of them. If you rename and recreate a linked table, all these things take up loads of these entries in this table. Now, back in the day, 2016 is a version I'm working with at the client at the moment. They had the old version, which only had 2048, not 200, 2048, 2048. So that was before, not too long ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, Microsoft Access realized that they needed to increase that because it was limiting in too many places. So they doubled that to 4096, but it's still only 4096. A lot of the code, without realizing it, certain code can be very expensive in these table entries.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can get to a situation where things crash with very strange error messages. They say, "Oh, you can't find this table." Huh? How can you not find it? It's right there. It's not invisible. It's perfectly visible. You can open it from the interface. It's just that the code VBA doesn't have any more entries left in its table to manage what it does with table defs.
So this was like a design pattern that the previous developers were using, where they were constantly opening lots of new tables.
No, actually not. It was mainly in some of the code that I was stitching in, because what the previous developers did, they had, 109 linked tables, but they would have had about 40 odd different locations. And they would go to they would create a different version of the front end for each location. And when they did a release, they would have to they'd go to a thing, produce the file, and relink all the tables. And then that's that location done. Then they go to the next location, relink all so every time they did a release, it would be hours and hours and hours of just getting the release out. So what we did, we introduced a thing where it did a relink automatically when you open it up. But subsequently we found that for this particular project, although other projects have worked with it before, I'm sure, in this project, because there are so many linked tables, and it's quite heavy usage, the way it manages it, it ran out of this internal table. In-memory table, it ran out of entries. So it crashed, or it stopped stopped working.
Adrian, I've got a question about, have they given any consideration to moving to a database server instead of multiple?
SQL Server.
SQL Server,
Yeah, this is what we're talking about is general purpose code. We're talking about code because we have to deal with databases that come from all sorts of areas. This one is all MDBs. Sorry, no, they're not. They're ActiveBs. They're all Access backends. Yes, we would like to move to SQL Server backend ultimately, but the code has to handle both. Has to handle all scenarios.
So you'd still have the same issue.
Probably not if we went to SQL Server, but what we don't want to do is take on a new project and immediately change everything on day one, because there would be too many things that if something goes wrong, where do you look? So we're trying to do it step by step and get something releasable and workable as soon as possible.
And of course, the code has to work in 32-bit as well.
Oh, I think it's particularly a problem in 32-bit. It will be less of a problem in the later version because it's got that increased table size. 64-bit, I don't know. I imagine it's got the 4096, but it may have even more, bearing in mind it's got space for more. 64-bit is not going to run short of working memory, but it might run short of internal tables that are used to store, manage objects. Like this one was 2048 in the version that we found. What's it going to be in 64-bit? I think it's the same, but it would still be 4096 in the increased version, the newer 365 version.
Can I change the topic a little bit and bring it back to using AI with our development? And one thing I've been reading about in the forums is some people have brought their AI onto their local machines, knowing full well that it might be a little slower because you need a lot of CPU and a lot of memory for these models to
I
work
see what you mean.
efficiently. But on the other hand, you can get only a slice of it and say, you don't know anything about gardening, but you do know a lot about VBA. So we just want that part to be, part of our. Has anyone gone down that road, or are we?
Okay. So you can say to just keep it all in-house, or you can say if there's something that you need to go out onto the internet and find, you ask me for permission and that sort of thing. So you can actually control to that point. And whether you're running the LLM totally on your local system or whether it's but yeah, you can give it the scope of where it can go to find information. And Google have one that's really good at summarizing all your documents. And you can run that just on your local system. I can't remember, was it Note something or other? It basically only looks at documents within your container.
Right.
It doesn't go out to the internet. But then you can say, okay, well, you can actually control whether it can or not.
Because earlier you were talking, or someone was talking about, what amount of data or code would we have to show to the AI to train it on the way we think programming should go? And someone said, well, let's harvest all the VBA from GitHub. And someone said, yeah, but how good is it? Well, there's no time in the world to go vet all that code, of course. But you can say, hey, I'm pretty confident that whatever code I wrote or my company wrote in the last 10 years, I'd be willing to train my AI on that. But I'm not willing to give it to Anthropic or whoever is the parent company. I just want to keep it local.
So you just have a local library. Yeah, you can do that.
And would that be enough to make a difference. I mean, we're talking in round numbers, you may be talking about 100 projects or so, 5,000 modules. It seems like such peanuts amount of training data that it may not make a difference.
Don't know.
It's a good question.
So a good question, fair to the point. I've got no idea.
Because what I'm hearing is that these AIs, suck up everything that's ever been published
Yes.
on the internet.
I've related on that topic. I've related before. I think that two of my books are in a lawsuit against Anthropic.
Yes.
For pirates. They trained on pirate sites. Yeah.
So with your GitHub repository, if you tell GitHub you want it to be private, can AI still dangle its dirty little mitts in there?
My experience with Claude and GitHub was that it could not get to a private repository unless I gave it the raw URL.
Oh.
If I gave it the raw URL, it could find it and read it. But if I just said it's in this repo, it couldn't find it. But since I changed the way I work, I haven't done that for several months.
I tried to tell Claude Code the other day that it should learn from something we were doing, and it said, "Oh, I can't do that. This is a one-way thing." I mean, it can do it internally, it can do it in our chat, but it can't feed it back to Claude itself. It can't feed it back to its server because it doesn't have permission.
Well, there are a lot of open questions, a lot more questions than answers at this point, aren't there?
Yes, it's all such new technology.
Yeah.
You know what they say, there's no stupid questions, just stupid people.
George, I've been using GitHub Copilot a little bit lately. I've been using it to build and update an ASP.NET website that I've been working on. I'm an Access developer primarily and not wonderfully good at websites normally, but it has done wonders for speeding up my programming and time. One of the interesting things I note with GitHub Copilot, it says can't find this file that it's looking for because it's looking for a controller rather than a web page using MVC. And it asks permission to run PowerShell apps to scan your folder structure and find the required files, which I find is quite interesting.
Yeah. I'm not even sure I followed that whole.
I think Brian was commenting on how little it can do without your permission.
Without express permission, yeah.
Yes, indeed. And you can, as well as, it won't be able to find that file unless you've either A, provided it, or B, given it permission to run a PowerShell function to scan your folders and locate that file. I think that is quite clever of it. And you have the option of choosing allow within the session, allow once or allow always. I keep away from the always one, obviously, but yeah, it's quite, I think that's quite clever. The other one I note that also within Visual Studio, it's GitHub Copilot, there is the option of choosing which AI you wish to use. So my options, I'm paying a $10 a month fee for GitHub Copilot, and I can use, I'm tend to use GPT 5.2 Codex, which is, I gather, is optimized for coding principles. Although I see there is Claude Optus 4.6 and Claude Sonnet 4.6 in there, as you guys are all talking about Claude. I haven't really done much with Claude, but that's some options that are available.
Yeah.
Well, the pro version of Claude, I think, is $200 a year, or $20 a month.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
There are
Yeah,
different rates,
yeah.
I think, depending on how much you use.
Yeah, you can sign up for a pro version or something like that. Yeah, a pro version of, I don't know, there's another level. It frequently asks me if I want to move up to the next level, which I don't want to do.
Someone in the chat said that they were at the $100 level, and that Mr. Ruggiero.
And $100 a month,
Yep, Claude Max.
Claude Max.
It is that valuable to me, they said.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if that's another interesting aspect. I think if I were a consultant, rather than hiring someone, I might very strongly consider, paying for that, doing that. I don't know if it would, but then that implies that your productivity is going to be that much greater too. And I've seen reports that isn't always the case.
But $100 a month, that's like 1 hour's worth of billing or less.
Yeah.
It's like a no-brainer for a company.
Yeah.
Can't buy an employee for $100 a month. Yeah, that's right.
I'll just add, this is Jan, I've been lurking, that you also want to be aware of your context when you're querying your AI. So I was given a task last week to write a stored procedure, which is something I've never done. And I could have easily just dropped it into chat or wherever and just kabam, had something done. But this was a very context specific task. It pertained to a spreadsheet that that chat was not aware of. And I was using Copilot on SSMS, and along with I had a chat window open separately. And because I gave more context to chat outside of Copilot, and chat couldn't see the database that I was using, it actually gave me a better answer. I also asked it to teach me a little bit about stored procedures because that was my personal goal. It's like, yeah, I can get, the chat to do it, but I need to understand enough so I can check your work. And then Copilot coughed something up equally quickly, but it because it had access to the database in SSMS, it assumed that I knew the primary key to the table because, gee, it's right there in the database. But the answer was no, I do not. I'm in a spreadsheet where I do not have that. And this stored procedure was to do with a spreadsheet. And so I, the human, knew that, and I had told chat that. So I was able to correct Copilot because it coughed up something with the primary key and aware clause. And though I was still weak on my, syntax for stored procedures, I caught the logic error. But at the same time, that's also conversely quite powerful when you have Copilot in SSMS with access to your database. How many rows is in this table? How big is this table? Does this one have a primary key? Does it have a constraint? You can quickly ask questions with regular language without having to, open query windows all the time. It lets you be lazy. So I just wanted to toss that out there.
But I think lazy is a euphemism for efficient.
Well, thank you. I'm really efficient.
Yeah.
Really efficient. I'm becoming really, really efficient.
Yeah.
I think laziness is a sign of intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of circled around to another point that I kind of put in my little email this morning too. That is that I kind of rely on Claude, what I think of as Claude in the cloud, I think it's Claude Chat, but I think of it as Claude in the cloud. I rely on it for general, what I think of as theoretical, philosophical, exploratory kinds of discussions. But when it comes time to actually do something productive, I switch over to the Claude Code version because I know it has direct access to the files that I'm going to be working with. And I really like the ability, like you just said, to pop a question in and say, you know, should I do this or that? What do you think? What are the benefits of doing it this way? What are the benefits of doing it that way? Don't write any code. I always end up, don't write code until I tell you to start. It's one of the standard lines. But I just want to know, you know, what was I looking at?
If I use there's a Claude application, Claude app, that I use for general questions. But if it's code based, it's almost always related to a project rather than, you know, independent code that isn't connected to anything. So I will always use the Claude code in the context. And Jeff, you're too late. We're just about to close up.
Yeah.
We've just stopped talking about you.
We've solved all your problems.
Yep.
So yeah, Claude says Jeffrey should insert derogatory term here.
Sorry, back now.
Oh,
No,
You're not rising to the bait.
no. Oh, I'm sure I didn't miss too much. I'm sure it was just Kent rambling on about things that nobody really cares about.
probably was. In fact, I think you nailed it there.
Right?
Adrian's just laughing.
Yes. Jeff is pretending he didn't hear the bit where I said, "Oh, we're just closing up now."
Oh, I did.
I know you did. We were pretending you didn't. Never mind.
So yeah, so I guess this is great being able to share experiences and ideas of how to employ this new radical technology.
I have to say, if I hadn't, I mean, I'm working with Mike Wolf now, as you know. I wouldn't have got anywhere near this without him and some of my other colleagues who are really into AI and looking into it and you know, finding out how to do things. And I'm just sort of following in their footsteps. But even just on that basis, I'm finding it extraordinarily helpful.
I guess the hard part is knowing what questions to ask.
I can do that.
Whereas if somebody's leading you through how to start using this, they're giving you kind of prompts. But if you're sitting there looking at a blank page,
not so much how to. They're looking at things like which engine to use. You know, they told me how to use Claude code within the folder. Once I got there, my communication with Claude code and Claude have always been that's something I can do. I've never had a problem in that area. I'm very precise, I'm very fussy, and that works with AI. But I wouldn't have gone out and got AI. I wouldn't have known to use Claude code rather than one of the others. These people, they're steps ahead of me on that, and they lead, and you know I follow in their slipstream, and the bits that I wouldn't be able to do, I don't have to do. The bits that I'm good at anyway, that's great. I'm happy with that. But there are bits that I wouldn't get to where I am. I wouldn't have got to where I am now without them having led the way and found the way that that works.
I think that was the point I was actually trying to make. Whereas
okay, I agree then.
I'm still fumbling around trying to figure out where to put skill files and MD files and how to do Docker and what have you. Because
it'll tell you.
You can
Ask Claude.
Follow my example, Kent. Just start doing it.
Yeah, but
and then go back later and figure out where you made a mistake.
well, yeah, that's kind of what I did. But for example, like using Docker. Now, I didn't know to try and use Docker until somebody told me. It's not like I could ask Claude and say, "Do I need to use Docker?" Because I didn't even know to ask.
That's
Whereas
exactly
if
what I'm
you've got
talking about.
somebody, yeah, somebody's leading you into this is kind of how you go about it. And that's where these kind of conversations are good because I mean I started off, yeah, I'd used Joyful Service to export to to text files, and what do I do next? Okay, you got to put it in Docker. And you got to connect it to GitHub. And then you can. So yeah, Claude, and you use the term you run an init, Adrian.
There's an instruction. It's either a command or a skill. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, I saw this somewhere. Where was it?
It's a
/ init /init enter, and it will go off and it will find from the folder that it's in. You open a folder first, /init, and it will go and discover everything in that folder tree. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. And you do that in Visual Studio Code.
Yes. Whenever you start, well, within the Claude Code extension of Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
And that way it will, every chat you start, so you could have one chat in your repo. If you start another separate chat within that same repo, you still have to say /init. I mean, it may be that it will find the existing MD file and say, oh, well, this is all pretty much up to date anyway, but here are a couple of changes because things might be different by then. So it'll make sure that that chat is up to date with the folder that you're in.
So I wouldn't have known to do this until you mentioned it.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
No,
Can you see my
I sent
screen?
you the network.
I can see your screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Jeff.
I'm running editor PowerShell rather than Visual Studio Code, but when it launches, it says.
And what's Bash?
It's a Unix-based
CLI.
shell, I think.
It's a GNU shell. Yeah, it's a GNU shell.
Yeah.
Okay. So go on, George.
I was just going to show. It's right there. You just run /init,
It's getting started.
Yeah, that's the first. That's the first prompt when I start Claude.
Okay.
Start Claude. This is the screen you get, or they. Yeah.
I find, I don't know that it doesn't say here, but I find that /init needs to be done from within a chat, which is within a folder structure.
Yeah.
If you do it, if you haven't set the folder structure first, that will be not meaningless, but it might be unhelpful.
Yeah.
So I see it calls you grumpy old man.
Yes, you can tell it to call it anything.
George.
I tried to register my YouTube channel as Cranky Old Kent, and they wouldn't let me.
Well, Claude is way more understanding. It has experience with me over the last several months. It knows me.
Mine calls me squishy because one night I said, well, unlike it always ends with, would you like me to do this or that or this other thing? You know, like it'll go on forever, right? And I'm like, it's 11:59 and I'm dying and I need to go to bed and I have an early day tomorrow. Like I would, but not right now. I need to take my squishy organic brain to bed. So it's been calling me squishy ever since.
Yeah.
That's great.
So Claude never sleeps. Squishy. All right.
Yeah.
What was it that, what's his face? Oh, I can't think of his name now. Lives in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh.
Ben.
Sounds like
Ben, that's the chappie, Satcherich. He says, he tells it to call him something like Supreme Commander or something.
No, Darth Vader. I think it was.
Vader.
The
Lord Vader.
Lord Vader.
Oh yeah, Lord Vader it was, yeah. And then he knows that it's
Call me El Masai.
properly initialized.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything we can summarize this session into one paragraph, or should we turn that over to AI to do?
I was going to say that's That's what it's there for.
That's what it's there for. No, it's been very useful in one sense. In another sense, I'm feeling a little bit unsatisfied because I think we raised more questions that remain to be explored than answers or even beginning of
Gives us something to
answers.
discuss next time, George.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this. Let's end on that. Is this something you want to continue to discuss?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.